Thanks so much. You can go ahead and put your hands together for Eric and all those who are organizing this conference. I really appreciate it. If you are familiar with West Michigan, particularly around this time of year, if you're paying attention, the Ned Stark's infamous words in Game of Thrones, Season 1, Episode 1, you know that those words can become irritatingly crisp and foreboding. These are the words: winter is coming. Winter is coming. Impolite, howling winds and persistent accumulations of crazy, disrespectful lake effect snow literally are on their way. But so are challenges that go well beyond snow accumulation. So are challenges that will hit us more personally, more privately. I just want to start us out with a few housekeeping notes, so y'all bear with me. With all due respect, while I've been invited here to talk about this theme and kick us off, that one person can make a difference, and I'm excited to do that, I realize that anytime I speak, some people will like what I say, and some people may not necessarily like what I say. And I just want to be real clear that I'm okay with that. Whether you decide to be engaged and attentive, whether you take notes until your heart's content, whether you fall asleep, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be real okay. I want you to realize that I don't go into spaces thirsty for affirmation. I'll say that again. I don't go into spaces thirsty for affirmation. I'm going to come and do my part, and then I'm going to get off this stage and mind my business. Secondly, I know we are in a church, but it's necessarily not a church service like a Sunday morning kind of thing, but if all I do is speak and all you do is sit there politely and listen, I'm cool if that happens, but that might make for not the most exciting, engaging time. Hecklers are not preferred, I'll just say, so if that's what you have in mind, stay away from that. But from the African American tradition and Baptist identities that I have, I'll just put it plainly by saying this: you can talk back to me if you can. If you can. I am excited to be here and just share a little bit about my story. So thirdly, again, just to set the stage, I need you to know that I am a pastor. Did y'all hear me? I am a pastor. I know that's already been mentioned by way of the material and the introduction, but I want you to be reminded that I am a pastor. I'm not a celebrity pastor. I'm not someone impersonating a pastor, someone who maybe is under the illusion that the advanced degrees that they have, or their lack of advanced degrees, or their name association makes them a pastor. Though being a pastor is very important to me and it's a big part of my life, it's not my entire life, but it's critical that you know this morning that I am a pastor. I listen as a pastor to people a lot. Like all the time, I'm listening to people. This doesn't put me on the hook to agree with all the litany of people that I listen to, because I don't agree with all the litany of people that I listen to, but I get great joy out of listening to people. I am a pastor. I baptize and bury people. I've visited more psychiatric hospitals and officiated more weddings and attended more high school softball and football games than most. Walking alongside people through cancer and careers and disappointments and faith and depression and relationships. Life's good, the bad, and the ugly. It's what I do. I am a pastor. For decades now, I've been a shepherd of two-legged sheep. Some who can be really nice and helpful, and some who can be a bit less so. Denzel Washington's character, Robert McCall, in the Equalizer trilogy, which many of you might be familiar with, is one of my favorite characters. In the first installment, he says something that I know to be true. You got to be who you are in this world, no matter what. And that's what I labor to do each and every day, to be who I am called to be in this world. And if people like it, hey, that's awesome. But if they don't, that's okay too. On June 15th, 1946, the year after her husband's last of 4 presidential terms, the incomparable First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, said this. She said, "It's not fair to ask of others what you are not willing to do yourself." So I just want you to know that that's the degree of accountability that I'm tethered to with you this morning. If I haven't pounded the gavel enough yet, and you could engage with me if you want to, here it is one more time. I am a pastor. Amen. One person. There you go. I appreciate it. So let me go on ahead and transition by invoking the legend of Forrest Gump by saying that's all I have to say about that. A tenured professor at Princeton Theological Seminary, Cleophas LaRue, has made the following reflection. Humans, at their best, are some odd mixture of dust and divinity, some strange assemblage of treasure and trash. In all of us, he goes on to write, there is a healthy smattering of gold and garbage. We can all make a difference. I get that the idea that we all can make a difference, that one person can make a difference, might make some people uneasy because the statement is presumptive. In it, there is confidence that the view being declared is accurate. And that's quite different from posing an interrogative, for example, like how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? That's an interrogative. That's a question. A question like, is Coke better than Pepsi? Amen. Another question might be, which is the better Christ-centered institution? Hope or Calvin? Hey. Another question might be, is Petrino's the best pizza in town, or is it, I know there's a litany of other examples, other options, but maybe the best pizza is, let's say, Crust 54. Or you could say from the biblical narrative, this question, can these dry bones live? These are open-ended questions, interrogatives. They welcome investigation. But here, this idea that one person can make a difference, the assumption is that the surveys or the longitudinal research, the arguments have been deliberated. It's done. It's been verified that, in fact, one person can make a difference. And that's fine as far as I'm concerned. But after accepting that one person can make a difference, most of us probably want to hear, well, how is it then that this is true? How is it that one person can make a difference? My world turned upside down on May 2nd, 1992. Riding home from an evening worship service with his mother and his older brothers, at the age of 13, Joseph was his name, my best friend, was shot in the head. Caught in crossfire from 2 men who were shooting across a city block at each other in a dispute in Seat Pleasant, Maryland, not far from where he and I attended school for 6 years as elementary students, he lost his life. The .45 caliber bullet that ripped through one window of his family's 1981 Mercury Cougar killed him instantly. Joseph was a straight A student his entire life. He dreamt of becoming a scientist. He played the drums in his youth band at church. He was a junior deacon at his church. I didn't know God back then as a young person, elementary school, middle school. My family did not go to church whatsoever. We weren't around Christians, but Joseph was one person that would talk to me about Jesus. And it came later in life, but this idea captivated me, that Jesus, God's Son, had taken a spiritual Amtrak train down from heaven to earth where the wild things are. And ultimately, after he lived a sin-free life, he sacrificed himself willingly on an old rugged cross. And he was crucified to save anyone who would open their heart and their mouth to confess that he is all that they need. Amen, somebody. Even at our young age, Joseph would talk to me about Jesus. I didn't understand all of it, but he would talk to me about Jesus. And 31 years later, I'm still talking about Joseph. And I'm talking about what God did in my life at the age of 20 when I became a Christian. Joseph Antonio Ford is one person who made a difference. Another is Ralph Waldo Beeson. He died October 15th, 1990 at the age of 89. He was a bachelor for almost half of his life. He married his wife Orlean when he was 40. Regardless of being a multimillionaire who made his fortune in the insurance business with his company Liberty National, he lived a quiet, pious, and fiscally prudent yet benevolent life. Mr. Beeson made over $100 million in the 80s after pouring his savings into stocks following the crash of 1929. While living, Mr. Beeson gave Asbury Theological Seminary a total of $14.4 million while he was living, and upon his death, he left another $38.8 million to that same institution, and another $38.8 million to Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, to endow their new divinity school. He was wise, he was sacrificial, he was a good steward of his time and his treasures and his attention and his talents. Mr. Beeson was one person who made a difference. But I think if we dig into it, there's a little more to the conversation. History proves that one person can make a difference. One person can change the world. One person can change a nation, change a community, change a family. It's a testimony that how you begin your life is not how you have to end your life. I want to submit to you, however, that not only can one person make a difference, it seems pretty clear from what we've talked about this morning, but I want to submit that all people make a difference, like present tense, like in real time, by default, whether we intend to make a difference or not, whether we acknowledge that we are making a difference or not. Each one of us, as friends and family members and employees and employers and neighbors and parents and nieces and nephews and customers and citizens and volunteers, we all make a difference that hurts or a difference that heals. Now, I'm not talking about perfection, but earnest faithfulness is what I'm talking about, a faithfulness that takes caring for others seriously. Sometimes what happens is we are completely apathetic, which is not good, or we put the cart before the horse and we participate in helping that hurts, which is really not helping at all, or you could say it's helping with an asterisk next to it. Now, I'm not talking about what in 2005 sociologists Christian Smith and Melinda Lundquist Denton called moralistic therapeutic deism. I'm not talking about a touchy-feely navel-gazing that says counseling really can save us, or our emotions and lived experiences exist on an equal plane with truth. But that's why I want to tell you to do your work, meaning to face your demons and your deficits. Because all of us have stuff. I have stuff. You have stuff. And this is the thing. If you don't think that you have stuff, that's only more evidence of the stuff that you really have, or of the fact that there's some stuff that has you. Because we all have stuff. None of us are exempt. None of us are exempt from some degree, some combination of hardship and privilege. We've all, at one time or another, been beneficiaries of a hand up or a handout, just a hand, whatever you want to call it. Someone showing us favor, someone giving us a break, because none of us are the autonomous mavericks that we like to think that we are. No one gets any place worth going purely on their own. And whether the wounds that we've experienced are self-inflicted or they come from outside of ourselves, on the macro or micro level, we are not able to accomplish as much as we think that we're accomplishing without doing our work. For some of us, our work is to tackle addiction through resources like Al-Anon or Alcoholics Anonymous, which is AA, or something like Celebrate Recovery. Some of us must work through issues of forgiveness or selfishness or jealousy or abandonment or abuse or other aspects of character development. And I'll just be real honest, many of us need a combination of all of that and a whole lot more. Born, as it was mentioned, in Okinawa, Japan, because of my father's Air Force enlistment, my home was run with military precision. My older sister and I, her name is Summer, like the season, she now works for the FBI. We were kind of sort of, supposed to be seen as children and not heard. And so that's kind of what we learned to do. And in the process, my parents, great people, we were held to some standards that were positively formative, that I would not change for this world, but we also were held to some standards that were, let's just say, less helpful and a little damaging. It took a long time for me to come to an understanding about trusting people, because in my household, anyone outside of it whose last name was not Ellis was viewed with suspicion. Our spheres of influence beyond school were limited to hanging out with our relatives in New York City or New Hampshire. Two totally different places. I can't say that I've suffered from something like attachment disorder, but I will say that it has been a journey to learn to open up to the right people. Somebody say right people. Joseph died when I was 13, but I also lost another close friend at the age of 19. She was abducted, raped, and murdered with her body dumped on the side of a highway in Virginia. So between those events and a complicated racial sojourn, there have been some issues that I've had to unpack and that I've had to resolve and mend and heal from so that I can get to a place of clarity and wholeness. And all of this work that I've had to do directly impacts how I treat people. There's this puppeteer and TV host, her name was Sherry Lewis, and she died at the age of 65 from complications of uterine cancer. But she had this really great show, maybe some of you will be familiar with. It was called Lamb Chops Sing Along, Play Along. And there was a song on rotation that she would sing for kids and adults. If you know it, you can sing along. It goes a little something like this. This is the song that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this, and it just goes on and on. Don't start that with kids, because they'll have you 20 minutes. We got to sing it again. All I'm saying is that when you refuse to do your work, it obviously hurts you, but it also limits the quality of the difference that you can make, that you are making in your home, on your job, in your community, and you're stuck in a loop. And I'll be real honest, that loop is something that hurts people. In his books, Peter Scazzaro explains that many of us only ever in life identify obvious surface level shortfalls. He's a pastor who had to learn the hard way that his hiccups, as it relates to his personality and some poor choices that he had made in life, they compromised only about 10% of the larger iceberg that was hidden from the public and that was underneath the surface of his life, because that's how glaciers and icebergs work. There's parts of them that you can see and they're big, but they're very small in comparison to what's beneath the surface that you cannot see. So I want to recommend, before I take my seat, 2 concepts that you will be able to handle well if you do your work. Like here it goes. Here are 2 concepts. Sociocultural nepotism, I'm going to explain, and justice with compassion. Nepotism speaks to advantages commonly applied to relatives around employment, where we ignore or we deny an obvious conflict of interest. Now, if social and cultural were to go half on a baby, sociocultural is the offspring. So with sociocultural modifying the noun, sociocultural nepotism is the idea of hiring or showing favoritism to those within your social and cultural networks and circles. You know, family members, yes, but also friends and friends of friends and the children of your friends and the children of your friends' friends and acquaintances. Sociocultural nepotism, I have found, is often more subtle, and it's a more acceptable side of bias because many of us want to live the most comfortable, predictable life possible. We therefore make an idol out of homogeneity or uniformity. Sameness feels pretty safe. It feels pretty empowering. It's not that complicated, so it doesn't demand much effort. And I get it. Nevertheless, often enough, this sameness and this sociocultural nepotism that I'm speaking about, it also sometimes leads to a version that is illegal, or it's immoral, or, I'm just going to be real honest with y'all this morning, it's just plain ignorant. Poor English, I know, but good theology. And to that degree, although comfort has its place, comfort has also been known to kill. Now, I've been in West Michigan before and grown familiar with and appreciative of the top-notch industries that we have here and the stellar towns that are scattered along the lakeshore. And so it would be easy for me to go real hard in the paint around this dynamic here, but I'm not going to do that. If you know and you've been around, then you know. But I do want to say, having resided before in rural Texas, like Waco, Texas, before the Gaineses became like a big thing in town, having lived in rural West Virginia, having lived in transient, lively cities like Washington, D.C., and Atlanta, and Pittsburgh, and most recently British Columbia, I want to say that sociocultural nepotism is alive and well as a way of life everywhere. Those who turn a blind eye to it, who just wink at it, or who embrace it as not really that much of a big deal, I'm sad to say, have not done their work. The Stepford Wives film, maybe some of you are familiar with that, comes to mind. It's simply not good to construct a world or a community that is full of clones who speak exactly like you, whose alma mater is your alma mater, whose alma mater was your alma mater's rival, who were brought up where and brought up how you were, whose favorite foods and favorite extracurricular fun mirrors your own favorite foods and your own favorite extracurricular fun, much less who are the sons and daughters of your frat buddies and your sorority sisters. And again, I know we're not necessarily having a church service, but for those who are thinking that this level of privileged alikeness to build a personal utopia, that it one way or another, somehow you want to parse the verbs, that it speaks to biblical teaching, that it aligns with biblical teaching, I'm just going to say, God bless your heart and all your parts, but you're wrong. We can chat about that at another day, but I'm just saying, I said it, you're wrong. And I know because I've been around the block a little bit, I've heard this before, the one elephant in the room around this conversation could be the argument for institutional fit. Maybe you've heard that term before, institutional fit. And I get that, fair enough. But if the only people that I can ever regularly recruit and attract, much less retain, are those who look and vote and recreate and otherwise live like me, then maybe I'm going to suggest that fixing my institution or my environment, helping it to mature, represents the job to be done. Amen. Should you elect to do your work, drawing a wider circle from the inside out to obtain a truly diverse and welcoming environment, if you do that, it will take shape differently, and that's okay, but it'll help you stand against sociocultural nepotism, not as a special project, but just because, hey, this is who I am and what I do. Moving on, second part I said, I believe in justice. Anybody out there believe in justice? I believe that there are some binaries that do exist in this thing we call life, that distinguish natural and unnatural, that distinguish right and wrong, that define lawful and unlawful, and generous and selfish, and good and evil. I believe in these kinds of binaries. I think that they are fundamental principles for how we need to live. And so I also believe that one function of a properly ordered society is that everyone, y'all hear me when I said everyone? You could say that with me, everyone. Everyone is held accountable for their actions and also held accountable for their inactions, for how they contribute positively or negatively in a harmful or hurtful way or helpful way to our society. I believe that justice is not at odds with compassion. When you do your work, you're better able to make a difference that is worth making. Now, this isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. How the dynamic shows up in your life is going to be a bit different than how it shows up in my life. That's okay. Even when people make decisions that result in them receiving what they deserve, when they receive a punishment that fits their misdeed, it's possible that we can still grieve their pain and hope that they learn from their error. One thing that I can do decently enough, we'll see how it goes today, it either scares the bejeebers out of children or it impresses them pretty greatly, is I can make an elephant sound. The sound is called trumpeting, I've learned. It's how they communicate with each other over long distances. It sounds a little something like this. That's trumpeting. Elephants, thank you. That took some effort. Elephants are believed to be one of the world's most empathetic species. There are even occurrences where an elephant or herds of elephants have put themselves in harm's way, not only to help save a fellow elephant, I mean, that makes sense, but where they've gone out of their way to try to save another animal, even an animal that is a predator that, frankly, could try to kill them. So I'm just saying that if elephants, whether they're trumpeting or not, I'm not saying you got to go around trying to do the sound, but if elephants can be compassionate, then we also can hold justice in our hand and also be compassionate. My challenge, if you haven't picked it up already, is that you would do your work. If you are short with people, or you find yourself aligned with the cowardly lion from The Wizard of Oz, if you know that it's wrong to rob Peter to pay Paul, but you just keep going back to that and it's hard for you to stop, if you're doing it anyway and you feel like maybe you're one of those people that feel you're highly judgmental and you realize that's a problem, or if you're someone who's a big mouth and they always see themselves as the most intelligent person in any room, if you struggle with being inauthentic or two-faced, someone who has situational convictions, which I'm just going to go ahead and tell you is not really a conviction at all, or if you are someone who works really, really, really hard trying to be someone you are not, and God never intended you to be, then I'm just asking that you this morning would begin a journey to do your work. Now, there's been a few photos behind me up on the screen, other than the scan that was the headline from the Metro section of the Washington Post from when my friend Joseph was murdered. The other photos from Holland's State Park during one frightening winter storm several years ago. I feel like I almost lost my life out there trying to take the picture. And there was another photo from an Alaskan iceberg on a cruise that I highly recommend. Holland America was the cruise line. I'm just saying, it was really good. All of those photos are mine. I dabble in photography in my spare time. And this one last photo before I take my seat is from New Orleans, Louisiana. Known as the Big Easy, it is a cosmopolitan city that my wife and I absolutely love. I gotta say though, at first glance, if you get to know us, it's a really odd pairing that we would like New Orleans, Louisiana as much as we do, because we do not drink alcohol, and we don't party, and we don't do drugs. And if that wasn't enough, which that probably could be enough for someone to not go to a city like that, New Orleans, if you know anything about it, is definitely not the safest place in the country. They consistently have a very high crime rate and a high murder rate as well. But even so, my wife and I love New Orleans, Louisiana. The seafood and the gumbo, the beignets, come on somebody. From Café du Monde, that's the only place, I'm just telling you, if you've not been, don't go to the other places. You're not going to get the experience. Go to Café du Monde. There you go. We love the swampy, bowl-like topography of the region that demands that tombs be above ground because of the high water table. We love the accents. Hey, baby, we love the accents. And the second line brass band funeral parades, all of that appeals to us. But what we appreciate the most, hands down, are the people. The spirit of the people, the pride that the people have about where they are from, no matter how much material goods they have, how hard or easy life has been, they have a sense of identity in that place. We appreciate their tenacity to fight through struggles and storms and rebound. We like their grit and their resolve and their transparency in calling things like they are. But this is the kicker. They will also call things like they are, even if it makes them look bad, even if they're talking about themselves. They'll be really honest about that. Due to the revelry that it is understandably known for far and wide, like Mardi Gras. We don't go during Mardi Gras. That wouldn't work for us well. And then also the recklessness, again, if we're going to be real honest, and the despair that are also very real in New Orleans. It's easy for any of us to act like it is a place that is hell on earth. NOLA, which is another one of their nicknames, sometimes gets a bad rap, I think, merely because people from New Orleans are honest about the tension and the inherent progress and recession, the 2 steps forward, the 5 steps back. They're honest about their individual and collective work, and they'll tell you that it's not pretty. And for that, I think there's a lot that they can teach us. Now, should you feel compelled to learn more about Jesus, I told you I'm a pastor, or if you are seeking a church home specifically, and I want to be real clear, not because you got a church home and you like that church home and you're attending that church home. If that's you, stay at that church home. But if you don't know Jesus and want to learn more about Jesus, or you are a Christian and have a church home like on paper, you know what I'm saying? Like you're on the roll, the roster, but everybody know you ain't been to that church for real, like in a while. And it's not a judgment. I'm just saying, if that's who you are, or you know that God is prompting you to seek some other place, I just want to be real candid. That service at Maplewood begins 10 o'clock on Sundays. We get you in, we get you out, about an hour. We're located on East 34th, just past Escape Ministries and Westside Auto. We are a small, I'm not going to give it to you any different. We are a small but mighty group. We are a Reformed congregation with myself, who is an ordained Baptist preacher, but we have, as you can maybe imagine, a really good time together. Lastly, if you want to connect with me, in the words of Coach Primetime Deion Sanders, I ain't hard to find. Thank you, guys.